here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the rockabilly band from Leeds. It is the one and only Pink Peg Slax, because I recently spoke to two of the members of the band, Mark Wilson, vocalist and rhythm guitar, and also Pete Barker, lead guitarist, to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. I will give you various links to the band in the notes below, but this is a three-way conversation which sometimes can be tricky. But so we start with early musical awakenings, and we begin with, this is going to be Pete and then Mark, and then you'll get the gist of who's who between the two of the members. Anyway, musical influences. Pete, it's over to you.
It sounds a bit of a cliche. I mean, I was brought up listening to my sister's sort of glam rock music like T-Rex and David Bowie. I'm 64. My sister's 3 years older than me, so I was brought up with that same oeuvre of music. But then when I was about 15, I got sidetracked in a horrible prog music for about 2 years. Then I discovered sort of Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that. But then the revelation for me was, I can remember this very clearly. I was listening to the Today program on Radio 4. My dad had it on, and they started playing Anarchy in the UK because it was the day after the Bill Grundy interview, which is, again, I think is almost it's an anniversary of that. I remember hearing it and thinking, why is Bob Dylan playing with these heavy metal guitars? Because Johnny Rotten in my head sounded just like a sort of mid-period sort of Bob Dylan. But I was totally enraptured by this song, Anarchy in the UK, and that led into an induction into punk. And then punk led to, I formed a band in Newcastle, which I was only 17 at the time, had a modicum of minor success with some lads who were former members of the Angelic Upstarts. And then I went to university in Leeds and I met Mark, and this is where the rockabilly thing sort of comes in. So I'm fast forwarding very, very quickly into that era. And in Leeds, I kept that sort of Newcastle punk band going. And we met Mark and Tim, who couldn't be with us today, and we formed a version of that band, basically playing sort of post-punk music, which was fairly average. And it was really around 1980 when we started to spend time with John Langford out of the Mekons.
Right.
And we decided to form the Pink Peg Slax almost as a bit of I wouldn't say a comedy band, but a bit of light relief.
Well, it was because I'd been like a big Elvis fan and 50s rock and roll fan, which I got into because the first record I bought, first proper record was I Didn't Know I Love You Till I Saw You Rock and Roll by Gary Glitter. So I was totally smitten by glitter rock and glam rock and mud and the Sweet, and that led me to Elvis. So I realise now that the most important influence on me isn't actually Elvis. It is glitter rock and glam rock. But so I'd done like a year or more, 2 years singing rock and roll Elvis stuff in working men's clubs in Barnsley, which is where I'm originally from. So I think it was like that showy side of me and the rock and roll side, plus the more like serious musical chops that Pete had, and Tim was starting to get, which that's how we came up with Pink Peg Slax. And Pete will tell you, but he had a lot more. He had all the early Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran stuff, which I hadn't listened to. I'd listened to almost exclusively Elvis. So Pete was playing me all this Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran stuff, and Eddie Cochran had this song Pink Peg Slax. And I don't know why we just picked that name for the band. It was just for one night. It was going to be just a one night gig at a summer ball. the place that we lived at university, and that's how we did our first gig.
Yeah.
Yes, blimey. And Pete, how did you mentioned your moment of prog rock? How did that sort of come into your consciousness in the 70s?
Well, it was just probably probably just immaturity, to be honest. I thought that, as a lot of people of probably age 40 or 15, and maybe a lot of people still think like this, think that the faster you can play and the more notes you can shove into this convoluted piece of music, that must therefore demonstrate proficiency and talent and creativity.
Yes.
But I just realized it was a load of tosh, basically, and moved on to something more basic and earthy, I suppose, and authentic is probably how to describe it these days. But yeah, it was just a sign of growing up, I suppose.
Well,
we were definitely, the punk thing happened at like the right time, or seemed to be the right time, because I hated all the prog stuff and I hated the disco stuff, and I like the basic quality of sort of 50s rock and roll music, and I like the sort of 2 or 3 minute songs that the Slade did and Mud did and the Rubettes and Wizard and so.
Shoddy Waddy?
No, I never rated them. They were just like almost like a music hall sort of buckling sort of band. Tesco Teds they used to call them, didn't they? So the punk thing sort of made it real, made this kind of it was reaction more than revolution, wasn't it? It was a reaction against it, and that I really picked up on that. And then I think the rockabilly thing was quite a rebel music and a sort of rebellious thing. So it was definitely we all definitely had the same thing going at the same time. It was extremely enjoyable.
Yes. Yeah. So what were you studying at Leeds University, Pete?
I was slightly unusual, but I was studying classics, which is Latin, Greek, and ancient history. And there was quite a lot of us. Andy Taylor, who then became Andrew Eldritch, was doing medieval Chinese or something at the same time as us. And there was a whole bunch of people doing weird and wonderful subjects. Mark was a bit more straightforward, but I was doing Latin.
I was doing history.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, right. So you're both at Leeds. Because there was a very good book that came out last year, I think, about that kind of art college scene from, like, was it 1976 to 1982, where someone's written in great detail about, bands like the Gang of Four and the Mekons. So had you been drawn to Leeds because of sort of hearing that it was quite a happening place?
I think, but it had a reputation as a good university for sort of humanities degrees. But then we heard that it was one of the biggest universities in terms of student population in the mid to late 70s.
It was the biggest.
Yeah. So it felt like but it had its musical reputation hadn't really emerged at that point. Well, it had because the first Mekons single had come out and the first Gang of Four EP had come out around about that time when we arrived. Yeah.
We were drawn right into that that scene, which all centred around like the Fenton pub and the Polly, and later the Faversham pub, and we kind of hung around on the peripheries of that. I mean, that's how we knew John Langford, and he was generous enough to allow us to become Mekons.
Right, you were there.
Yeah.
And had you come in contact with people like the Rockettes, Levi and the Rockettes, who were down? Was it so they'd gone from Essex to New York, hadn't they?
No, I didn't even. I didn't know anything about them. We went straight from listening to Pete's Gene Vincent and the Cramps. The Cramps were a huge influence. And B-52's a bit, and Elvis, and we went straight into playing kind of sun sessions, sort of rockabilly mixed up with like quite crazy. The stuff that we did when we started Pink Peg Slax was it was all original stuff, but it was quite.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to just say that we were also quite influenced by early British rock and roll as well. Things like Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, and very early Cliff Richard when he was quite good.
Yes.
So yeah, that was there's a splash of British rock and roll influence in there as well.
Yes. I mean, obviously Leeds then becomes this kind of the centre of goth, doesn't it? And then anarcho-punks a bit later. So you sort of had it, but you were obviously part of that scene with the Mekons.
Yeah, it was a bit of a, I mean, it's, again, cliche, it was a bit of a melting pot. So, you could be in multiple bands at once.
Incestuous
and we also,
is another word you could use, isn't it?
It's a what?
Incestuous.
Well, yeah, possibly. But yeah, I mean, John Langford was a very entrepreneurial and generous spirit, and he said, "Why don't we try this experimental rockabilly band, the Pink Peg Slax?" And so the early phase of the Pink Peg Slax was basically John on drums, Mark on guitar, me on guitar, and Tim on bass. And that lasted about 9 months, I think. And before then, we sort of spun off into what I would call the mainstream Pink Peg Slax, which was me, Mark, and Tim. And then we had an illustrious busking career for a short time as well.
Right.
Well, that's how we got to be really, really good and really tight by busking a lot, and you just got to be really good at what you were doing, because you were playing non-stop virtually, for 3 or 4 hours if you wanted to earn a lot of money, and we were pretty proficient at busking.
Mm.
And we did go to the south of France, and we were driven all over by this guy in the south of France, and Nice and Antibes and Jean Le Pen. And that was when we were operating as a trio.
Yeah.
Yes, because a few years later, then we have people like Terry and Jerry, don't we, on In Tape Records? But I think they come a little bit later than you, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we but the time they came out, Pete had left, and we'd got a stand-up drummer, and we worked as a trio like that for about a year, 2 years before we really got into like the Hank Williams thing and the Cajun thing, and we got a fiddle player. And that's when I started writing a lot more stuff.
Yes. And were you still at university during the early 80s, or were you leaving sort of 81, 82?
Yeah, we both left in 81. So
right. Yeah. So were you doing the band as a sort of full-time kind of project career at this stage?
I suppose I mean, it really, that side of things really took off after the university bit, and I think I decided to move back to Newcastle in '83, and then Mark and Tim kept the band going, and that's the sort of probably when, ironically, they had the greatest success after I'd left.
We started making records. Yeah. No, but I was the one who didn't get a job, because I was kind of doing it full time, but signing on the dole like everyone did in those days. Which is why I had a stage name, like everyone did. So I'd got my degree, but I didn't actually do anything with it. So I did music full time until it became clear that we weren't going to make it. We weren't signed to a major record label. Publishing deals and stuff all said you will be signed to a major record label. We weren't, and that's when I kind of decided I had to get like a proper job. So I eventually got a proper job.
Yes. So your early years, but you got picked up quite quickly then. So you were supporting the Mekons, and then did you say Bow Wow Wow as well was one your sort of one of those?
That's probably because of Langford, was it, or because we?
Yeah, I think he I can't remember how we got a gig, but that was in
Baldy Mekon. Baldy Mekon was their road manager, tour manager.
That's it. Yeah. So that all happened in that very early phase, that sort of 9-month period I mentioned earlier, in sort of late 1980 through to early 81. The busking Pink Peg Slax was really sort of
82.
81, 82, early 83, and then And then after that, there was the more diverse with the Cajun stuff and which is not really my era.
No.
But I just remembered. I mean, when we were talking about the goth thing, I mean that was because Pete mentioned before, and Andy was it Andy Taylor?
Yeah.
So see, Langford was originally John Langford was originally, I'm sure, was in the Sisters of Mercy, or he helped start them. But at one point, we did Pink Peg Slax did a gig at the university, the big venue, the Riley Smith Hall, and they were supporting us, I'm sure, and they had that drum machine that was the same drum machine that John Langford had. Mm-hmm. So it was really strange because that whole thing started at the same time that we started, and they obviously went on to sort of conquer the not in the world, but it was like, who was it who said, you might know, David, who actually said this, that punks either became goths or rockabillys. People who'd been in punk bands, when it finished, they obviously didn't. A lot of them did other stuff as well, but it was obviously what I was going to be. But yeah, the goth thing just seemed to come out because of Bauhaus, I reckon, and stuff like that. That was like 82, 83.
Yeah, just while I remember, David, if I was looking this earlier, we've got a Pink Peg Slax Instagram page, and it's got loads of photographs from this whole era, and we've even got that poster for that gig that Mark mentioned, where the Sisters of Mercy supported us.
Blimey!
So if people look at the Pink Peg Slax Instagram, they'll see a wealth of early photographs from that whole era.
So were you playing kind of quite a regular live date most nights in Leeds at that stage?
Pretty frequently. Yeah. But I was just thinking that as well as playing with the Sisters, we did that gig at York University, and I think the Sisters were the headline band, and then it was the March Violets, and then we were the opening band. Mm-hmm. And Andy, we called him the Poodle, had produced these pompous Gothic script labels for the dressing rooms. I couldn't believe it, and it had our name. It says the Pink Peg Slax dressing room in this kind of ghostly sort of goth script. But we were just pissing about and getting pissed and mucking about, and they were just like, they seemed to be totally serious about the whole thing the whole time. But the first record that Pink Peg Slax produced, that was put out on this Batfish Incorporated label, which was Simon Denby's label. So even someone like him, we used to take the piss out of him the whole time, even he was incredibly generous. That he took our stuff, went to and said, I'm going to get you a distribution deal with Red Rhino, and he put our first record out. So we just kind of knew lots of people, and lots of people were very nice to us.
Yes, blimey. And did you tour much around the UK, or was it mostly sort of around the Leeds, Bradford, northern area?
Well, when the Slats got going in the mid '80s, we did a tour with Sleepy LaBeef and Hank Wangford. We did some dates with the Mission. So we did a lot of gigs, but not many kind of proper tours. And then in the late '80s, we did tours in Germany because everybody was just getting work in Germany because the scene, music scene was so good there at that time.
Yes. And when did John Peel when did you come on the radar of Mr. Peel?
Well, we got a gig. We saw his road show was on at Leeds Poly at one of the big student nights, and we got a gig as the band that was going to be on, and John Peel was on stage with his road show. So we just got the white label of the first single, so we just gave it to him, and he really liked the show, and he said, "I'll play this tomorrow night," and sure, and he did. He played it several times. Said how great he thought we were. Said they were a very good live band. So he kept saying this. So I think my wife, she wasn't my wife at the time, she just rang John Walters up and said, no, we wrote to him and said, can we have a session? That was it. And the phone number was my wife's work phone number. And John Walters just rang her up one day and just said, can you come in on such and such a date and do a session? So that's how we got started on Peel.
Yes. So what was the date of your first John Peel session?
I think it was...
Yeah, sorry, Mark.
Oh, do you mean the one with the Mekons or the one with the Pink Peg Slax?
The Mekons one.
That was December 1980.
December 1980.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then you were on his radar. So what was the first one as Pink Slacks?
Pink Peg Slax.
Yes.
That was June 84.
Right, so that was the one. Who was your producer for that? Was it Dale Griffin?
It was Dale Griffin, yeah.
Right, and what did he think of the band? Was he pleased with it?
Well, he made it sound very good. So it's terrible now thinking about it because I'm such a massive Mott the Hoople fan now, and I had been, I suppose, when I was a teenager. But I was just like so interested in what I was personally doing or what the band was doing. They said, "Oh, you know, that's the drummer out of Mott the Hoople." I went, "Oh, yeah, right, yeah." And I wasn't I wasn't impressed at all. But I could have. I don't know, if I was in the room with him now, I mean, I'd talk him to death. But he was just really good, really fast. I mean, you didn't realise. We finished recording, and he just said, "Go out and get something to eat, or get some more beer or something." And we went out. He said, "I'll play around with a few things." And we went out, and when we came back, we could hear this stuff coming over the headphones on the floor of the phones. We put the headphones down on the floor of the studio. We could hear this stuff coming back, and I was thinking, "What the fuck is that?" And I couldn't believe what he'd just done this big production number on it. But yeah, he was really good to work. He agreed. He said he'd produce. He said he agreed he'd produce our next single, but we weren't able to get him because he was going to charge an awful lot of money.
Yes. And when did you first come in contact with David? Is it Keegan?
John Keenan?
Yes, because he did he put on Futurama, didn't he?
Yeah. We'd known him because people know this because we kept trying to get him to put us on. He did put us on, Pete, didn't he, at the fan club?
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Yeah.
He did. He wasn't that interested in the new wave band, but he put us on. Oh, he started managing me because I worked as a solo artist as well, and for some reason he really liked the solo act, and he put me on loads of stuff. I did loads of tours with I did 2 tours with Murray Wilson and Will Sations and with Alexis Sale. And then he put us on at the third Futurama in 1983. So yeah, and over the years, he's been really, really good to me.
Yes. So with you had quite a few band line changes at this stage, though, in the early 80s, didn't you? So
yeah.
So did you then decide you were going to leave, Pete?
Yeah, I just thought I'd better get a proper job. And my home territory of Newcastle was sort of calling me back, so it was a real wrench, and I didn't really want to do it, which is why I got back together with Mark, in the mid '90s, and we've been strong mates ever since. But yeah, I just decided to pull myself away, and I didn't see Mark or Tim for like 12, 15 years after that.
Right, my God, that is a big wrench, isn't it?
Yeah.
But with the band, 84, you bring out your first single, don't you? Self-Pity and Stan on Half Cut Records. Whose label is this? Well,
it was my idea to call it Half Cut because I think it's quite funny. But it was just an imprint that we had, that Red Rhino Records let us use. So the deal was with Red Rhino Records. Like everyone in Leeds was on, that wasn't signed to a major, was on some sort of deal with Red Rhino. So Half Cut was the first single was Dripping My Love for You. The second one was Self Pity and Stan. And the next sort of 4 releases were on Half Cut.
Yes, my God. So then you brought the album out, didn't you? Belting Out a Tuna,
yeah,
which is 86. So with the sort of the musical landscape of the 80s, it was kind of interesting. It gets very tribal, doesn't it? You had the sort of anarcho-punk, you had the goth scene, you had new romantics, indie pop. So how were you sort of navigating it yourself, being in the middle of all this kind of excitement?
Well, we couldn't really navigate it because, like I put in the biog, there was like a rock and roll scene, like a rockabilly scene, psychobilly scene.
Yes,
but we were like an indie band, and to the rockabilly lot, we were just like a sort of indie band, and so they didn't like us for being an indie band. But then all the sort of indie goth scene, they didn't like us because we were like rockabilly. So we were an authentic, if irreverent, sort of rockabilly, Cajun. Peel called it Cajun Tins Jive.
Oh my God, you're frozen. Don't freeze. Mark, you're frozen. I know. You look quite emotional on that picture. Yes. Yeah. So what, Pete, what did John Peel mention? Or how did he describe you?
I think Mark is the only Mark knows that one, because I wasn't really around at that point.
Yes.
When he comes back, he'll be able to fill us in on that.
I know
Yeah. So, I mean, just to fast forward, we Mark played music all his life, and I met Mark again back in the mid '90s, and we became good friends again, and not that we ever fell out really, but and then we sort of revived the band. Well, the band the Pink Peg Slax has been going on and off ever since, but yes. I rejoined in 2017, and from then right up to probably the midway through the pandemic, we were almost the same. The band had sort of got back together again to some degree.
Yeah,
and we did actually play a gig in Nottingham in November 2019, where Tim was actually there as well. So we actually got the original lineup back together for that at a place called Billy Bootleggers in Nottingham, which is a great night.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed doing this show is that I think when I first started doing the C86 show about 5-6 years ago, 6-7 years probably, I mean, there wasn't that much it didn't feel like there was much interest in the 80s indie or the alternative scene. But actually, since the last 4 years, there's been so many, books, films, exhibitions, documentaries made, and people are getting much more excited about the absolute kind of digging down, because I think the narrative of the 80s was just told by a few people, who were in the media. Like, it was very simplistic. It was, yes, you are, like it was New Romantics, the Blitz Kid, Live Aid, and that was it. And then someone would pop up and say, no, actually, there was this part of the 80s. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that you started sort of wanting to sort of sort out your kind of music archives and sort of get some structure to the history of the band.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Mark's more of it.
I've kind of catalogued it all. So I've got every recording. I think. I mean, apart from stuff that people have on cassette, if he's transcribed it, I don't know. But I've got everything, including I've got all the old master tapes and everything. So that's all been digitized. Are you still there, David?
Yes, God, I'm still. I haven't frozen.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So, I've got it all, including including the stuff we did with John Langford and the first Peel session we did with the Mekons. I haven't got any of the Mekons stuff because the only good song on it is the one that we did.
Yes. Yeah. So look, I was just saying to Pete about the interest in the alternative 80s scene that's really sort of started getting very excited in the last 5 years. And I just wondered if you'd noticed a much more interest in this scene. Because when I first started doing this show and interviews, I mean, the indie world wasn't that sort of, people weren't that excited. But then in the last few years, there's been all these publications, books, exhibitions, and Cherry Red Records are constantly bringing out compilations, aren't they? So I just wondered if you've also, and you just answered that by saying that you've got all your stuff. Have you got kind of plans to, yes, put some nice box set together of the band?
I might do. I mean, we were on the Cherry Red compilation "Where Were You" that came out last year.
Oh yes, so the one from Leeds.
Yeah,
boy from Leeds. Yeah. So,
but Mark, you and Tim pulled together that sort of best of the Pink Peg Slax around 2005 or 6.
2012. 2012.
2012. Yeah, that's a pretty good summary of the career.
I'd say that. Yeah, I mean that's still available. I think.
Yes.
That's on Raucous Records.
Nice one.
So yeah, and then plus, like I said, I have got. I mean, the stuff that I've recorded over the years. I mean, I think when I last counted it, there's like 300 songs. Only a very small proportion of those were available commercially. But if I could find someone who'd, I'm not very good at the business side of it, so I'd have to find someone who could. I suppose, I ought to try and find if there's anyone interested in putting it out.
Yes. So just going back to the 80s then, so you bring out the album, how does that go, how does that then sort of, what happens next?
Well, it sort of got very good reviews, but we didn't sell huge numbers of records because it was a small market, and we were up against the sort of competition from goth bands. But I mean, it was, Peel played the album, it did all right, and then they wanted to do another record, so we did a 4-track 12-inch EP, 45 RPM EP, and then we did a second album.
Right.
And so,
what is this? The 12 songs never recorded by Frank
Sinatra. Yeah. So,
yes.
So when I look at it's really strange because when I look at the press archive, the majority of the stuff isn't from the earlier period. The majority of the stuff is from like 86, 87, 88. And that album did okay as well. But by that stage, I decided to pack it in and get a proper job. Right.
Was it exhausting? Because you'd been doing it for about 8 years by then.
From 82 to about 88. Yeah. So 80 to 88. Yeah, I've been doing it for about 8 years. And
yes.
I was sick of having no money.
This does happen, actually. I mean, one of the things, and one of the reasons I think there were so many indie bands in the 80s was that, the social security systems helped finance it, really, didn't it? There was job seekers allowance, enterprise allowance schemes, the unemployment, you got your housing benefit, council tax. So was that all sort of ways that the band were able to go as long as they did?
Well, no, I'd say that generally speaking, that's true. I mean, Tim, the bass player, he worked as a civil servant the whole time. And who was the drummer, he worked with hopeless alcoholics and down and outs. So he was very well able to look after me. So they both worked, but I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't had the patronage of Her Majesty's Social Security, and like most of the people I knew that were in bands were, signing on the dough, unless they were signed, to a major label or something.
Yes. So then you finished the band in was it 87, 88 time? So then when does your next musical adventure happen?
Pete actually, we started like Pink Peg Slax periodically from time to time, and got back with Tim and Ant, and then my son was playing double bass, and Pete rejoined the band a few years ago, and we did quite a few gigs together. But I've always done stuff on my own as Vince Berkeley, and then I've had like other rockabilly trios and 20-piece big band that I helped set up called the Cat Pack, and I was in a jump blues band from Sheffield, 7-piece jump blues band. So I'm now in a punk band.
Right.
And we've just done our first CD. So I've never stopped. I've never ever stopped doing music, live and recorded music. It's just we used to get in the music papers every other week, and we had someone paying for the records to be made. So that's the difference. I've never stopped doing it.
Right, blimey. And you had some live dates this year, 2024. How did they go down?
Not done too many. I've done a lot of gigs with a punk band, but we haven't done any gigs as a Slax for a couple of years now, Pete, have we?
Yeah, I mean, the last time I played, we did a gig in Newcastle in 2021, which I played at with you and the other guys, and I was saying to David that we played that gig in Nottingham with Tim back in November 2019, which was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, we intermittent is probably the best word to describe.
Yes, blimey. So you go out as a solo artist as well, Mark. That's what you do quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I should do more. But as I'm sort of getting old, it's tempting to do gigs that are local and easy to do, and that you don't have to bring any gear to. So there's a cafe bar in the centre of Leeds called Northern Guitars, which I had a kind of I've played there dozens of times, so I've always got a gig there if I want one.
Yes, blimey. And if you could have said something to like your 16-year-old self starting out in the music world, is there any sort of wise bit of advice that you would give them?
I would probably say if I'd heard myself saying this when I was 16, I'd probably kick myself, but don't take it too seriously. I don't mean don't take the music too seriously, but take lighten up and,
enjoy it.
Enjoy it. That's it.
Yes.
I actually would be more boring than that. I'm not saying that was boring. I'm saying I would be boring and say be more commercial, and take advice from people who know more about it than you, which I was absolutely awful at doing. I would get very good advice from people in the business, like record labels. A&R people would say, have you thought of doing it a bit more like this? And I'd just go, fuck, what the fuck do they know? And I can remember when I was working as a solo artist, I was supporting Mary Wilson, and she had this kind of pop Svengali that managed it called Tot Taylor.
Oh my God,
and he was like a songwriter and arranger, and I was her support act, and he came up to me and said, I've got a song, Vince, it'll be just right for you. And I just thought, what do you know? I'm doing Pink Peg Slax. I'm not bothered about this. And he was going, yeah, come round to my studio and I'll play it to you. Why did I not go? And then there was a bloke called Andrew Gold who used to manage before Mark Bolan did T-Rex. He managed Mark Bolan. He came up to me in this after gig party and said, I could tell you a lot of stuff, to help you. I could tell you about little guy that I used to manage called Mark Feld. Yeah, you might know him as Mark Bowen. And I went, yeah. And all I had to do was like say yes to people, and not. That's what. So my advice to my younger self would be: listen to what people who've been in the business, because they know more about it than you.
Yes.
The other thing to add in the last sort of 45 minutes or so we've been talking, there's a lot more humour. I mean, we've dropped the odd anecdote in, but there's a huge wealth of humorous stories, which we probably haven't really touched on, and really amazing encounters with people. There's also a few other crossovers musically which we haven't touched on, which was the connection with Soft Cell and Mark Almond and the Fab.
Oh yeah,
and we did we support Soft Cell once in the Phonographique in Leeds?
Well, we definitely played the Phonographique. I don't know if we ever supported them, but I mean, Tim played on Mark and the Mambas record, and all of those pieces out of the warehouse that were in the New Romantic thing, we were all kind of part of that scene.
Yeah. If you look on the Instagram account's got some pictures of us sort of hanging out with the warehouse people around that era in '82.
Right. So well. Did you know people like Annie Hogan, who was kind of with Mark and the Mambas at one stage?
I'd have known who she was. I don't remember her name. I'd have seen her.
Yes.
But the other thing that we haven't brought out is how intoxicatingly fantastic it was. And I wouldn't. Apart from like, I wish I'd listened to more advice. We had the most fantastic time, and I had the most brilliant time. And I would always encourage anyone, if they wanted to have a go at it, to do it and to have as much fun as possible while they're doing it.
Yeah,
because we certainly had. I mean, it was great to be in Leeds at that time, and to be part of that, even on the periphery of the gang, the Borne and the Mekons, and also to be like around when the goth thing was happening and the New Romantic thing. I mean, yes. I thought we were really lucky. But I mean, the thing that most often comes up, I mean, you mentioned right at the start of this, is certainly for me and like most of the people that I'm in bands with and stuff now, is like, sort of glam rock was really, really was a really important certain part of my kind of musical background.
Yes. Just going back to that event that was in '84, this is the one which is the ICA Rock Week, isn't it? The Institute of Contemporary Arts. So how did you manage to get on that bill? Because you were with it with Yeah Yeah No and Yip Yip Coyote, weren't you?
Well, again, John Walters just rang up and said, there's a gig at the ICA John Peel Rock Week, sponsored by Harp Lager. We want you to play it. The fee will be, I can't remember what it was. It wasn't that great for London, but you'd get free beer and you'd be on the radio. And
oh my God, you just froze again.
Yeah,
so tricky, isn't it? Really. So by then, Pete, you'd left the band by '84, hadn't you?
Yeah. I just was keeping in touch vicariously by reading the music press, occasionally reading articles about what was going on with the Slacks, and then when I met Mark again in '95 onwards, he filled me in on a lot of this detail. So I've heard most of the detail of this, though I wasn't actually involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
You nearly froze there, Mark. That's all.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that it was quite weird. It was a really great gig, the playing at the ICA because of the prestigious venue, And the fact that you had to do 2 sound checks, one for the live sound, for the live audience, and another for the BBC. And it was quite interesting because they were kind of like, the live sound people go, "That sounds terrible. You're not doing that." And then the BBC people would go, "They've got to be this. This isn't going to sound right on the radio." And they were almost like fighting because and I think I said I think I'd rather sound good in this audience because people have paid to come and see us. It ended up with a pretty good sound.
Yes.
I think on the best of CD, there are 2 tracks on that from that session, and this, they sound good on CD.
Because then the following year, 85, you do your next John Peel session, don't you?
Yeah. That was produced by someone who's made a load of film music. He was very different to Dale Griffiths, and I missed a trick there, and I didn't have enough material. We ended up doing a cover of a Hank Williams song, which sounded pretty good. But I don't know if Peel liked that one as much. He didn't play it 3 times. He only played it twice. He sometimes played sessions 4 times.
Yes.
But it was great. It was like when Pete said the first time we did a Peel session was at the Langham building. So that was the old BBC on Regent Street. And Bob Sargent produced that.
Yeah. I was just reading his Wikipedia entry because I'd forgot he died a couple of years ago. He's actually from the Northeast as well. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
He did a load of
piano on it as well, didn't he? He was a real great.
Yeah.
Old school, proper hands-on producer. He played a great rock and roll piano player, Jerry Lee type piano player. And then when we did the Peel session, the John Peel session in the Slax later, we were in the Maida Vale studios, which is basically like the same as Abbey Road. I mean, it's like one of the best record studios in the world. I don't know if it's still there. I mean, aren't they? They've pulled it down, I think.
Probably, yes. So did you sign your publishing with Red Rhino then at this stage?
It was a company that was run by them called Screaming Red Music. So the publishing was done through Screaming Red Music. But you just had to go with this publisher. They didn't really do anything. And I got the copyright back on the full 12/12s of the copyright back a few years later.
Right. Jeezy.
They didn't do anything for the money.
No, that was true. I think the Janitors were on that particular publisher as well. Can you remember Yes.
It was a bloke called Rob Warby that ran it, who had stuff to do with the Mekons when they went to America, I think.
Right, yes. So have you ever had any sort of dreams of putting out your John Peel sessions? Because I know there's a guy called Nick who does this label called Precious Recordings of London. He's been getting John Peel sessions and Andy Kershaw sessions recorded or released. Have you ever sort of thought about doing it for your band?
What was it called, that label?
The Precious Recordings of London, he calls it. You can find it on Bandcamp. If you just put that in to Bandcamp, you'll discover all the releases he's done so far in the last 3 years.
Well, we put a lot of we put a fair bit of the Peel sessions out on the best of CD, but I'll get in touch with him and see if he's interested.
Yes,
we did do an Andy Kershaw session, which was a complete opposite of doing a John Peel session. Because you think, when we said, great, we've got a Kershaw session, you don't go to London. He had his stuff recorded at this place called Strawberry 2, which is, I think the Smiths recorded there. And it had been set up by 10cc originally. So
right.
it had a great reputation as a Manchester studio, but we had a terrible experience there, and it ended up with the producer saying to me, "I'll make sure you never work for the BBC ever again," which is about the third time that got said to me. Various sort of drunken exploits and being incontinent in various ways.
Verbally, mainly, was it?
Verbally, but also in the physical sense, I think.
Yeah.
But no, that was a terrible thing. When it was touch and go whether it was going to even be broadcast. Because I'd hired this Dixieland quartet that used to play at the University Union, and there was so much trouble in the studio with sound because they couldn't get sound. It was technical stuff, and this band were all like in the 40s and 50s, just spent the entire day in the pub. And so by the time we came to record, they could hardly stand. And I was this pissed person trying to keep this bunch of even more pissed people in sort of trying to be in charge of them. And this producer was getting more and more cross with me and more cross with this band. And it was actually one of the most horrible atmospheres I've ever done any music. I can't remember the bloke's name. I've tried to sort of almost expunge it from my mind. It was so terrible. Yes.
Have you ever heard the session since then?
I do listen to it from time to time, but there's the sound is just bad. It's not because we were bad. It's just that it was terrible. I don't think that the producer had worked there before. He didn't get on with the engineer. I don't think the engineer knew what. It was just like every technical thing you could think of went wrong. So we basically, you've only got a day to record and mix 4 songs, and we hadn't recorded anything by 6 o'clock at night.
Oh dear, that's not good, actually.
No, so Kershaw played it, but and he said, "Oh, that was a tremendous session there from the Pink Peg Slax." But I thought, no, it fucking wasn't. In fact, when it was broadcast, we had like a ghetto blaster, and we were doing a gig, and in the end, I just said, I can't listen to it, and I turned it off. So we didn't even listen to it. Whereas when we were on Peel, we'd just be glued to it.
Yes. My God, that was not a good moment, was it? This was the end of the band, wasn't it? Really? Was it quite a heavy drinking band, by the way?
Yeah. No, well, probably no more than other bands, but I certainly was. And,
I think in the early, I can only speak of the 80 to 82. But obviously, I was only 20 to 21, 22. Well, Mark was only a year older than me, but I think we were sort of experimenting with drinking. We didn't really take any other substances particularly. Smoked a bit as well. But,
yes, it was of its moment, wasn't it? Really. Yeah. Did you ever play any festivals?
No.
I played. I played at a Rock Against. We did a few Rock Against Racism gigs.
What about kind of the Miners' Strike and Red Wedge? Yeah. Did you ever get involved with those kind of, or the anarcho-punk scene in Leeds?
I'm from a mining background, and I was really, really devastated by what happened in the strike. And we found out about this thing called Operation Food Force, which is raising money for the striking miners' families. So we put on a show for them. So we did anything that we could to help that cause at the time. But we didn't get involved with Red Wedge or anything. But it was a really bad period.
Yes,
so I was proud to do anything really.
Yeah, and I sort of read James Brown's book Animal House last year, and that little bit at the beginning, his childhood, and then the 80s, working with the NME and doing his fanzine in Leeds. Was he a big fan of the band, by the way?
It's Mark frozen again.
God, he loves to freeze at moments like this, doesn't he? But I just noticed on one of your kind of little bits of blurb that he sort of, yes, Mark, the James Brown connection from the NME, and then obviously loaded. Was he a big, because he was in his book Animal House, he talks a lot about the Leeds scene and his fanzine. So did he come across the band quite a bit in those early days?
Yeah, he wrote some quite good pieces on us in NME, and well, he lived next door to my wife when she was a student. And he used to come round. For some reason, he used to come round our flat all the time, and I taught him how to cook. His mother had never cooked anything, so he was fascinated by me cooking. So he used to come round and watch me cook. So I taught him how to cook.
Oh, that's so sweet.
But yeah, he at one point he was managing some band in the early 90s. Horrible band. It's like a boy band. And I did some support gigs for him. Quite weird.
Really? I can't remember
I
that.
stayed at his flat in London because there was a gig there. It was quite strange. So this was after he'd done NME. He'd left NME, I think. And it must have been just before he started doing like these lad mags.
Yes. Oh, was that? Oh no, I was just looking at his Wikipedia because he did his fanzine, then the NME, and then Loaded started in 94. So he had a bit of a boy band at the early 90s.
This was 92. This was 92. Yeah.
Yes, and he said he was a manager of Fabulous, a rock band composed of various.
Them. That's them. Yeah.
God, yes. Oh, yes, they've disappeared without a trace, haven't they? There you go.
I don't think he was cut out to be a manager.
No, but a fantastic journalist anyway. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there was a great documentary about Loaded the other week on the iPlayer if you want to watch it, and his little story of his life. So there you go.
I've got it on my list to watch.
List of things. So what have you got lined up for the next 6 months on your performing or recording on front?
I haven't got anything. Nothing with Pink Peg Slax anyway. I've got. I'm doing like I say, I'm playing every other week with this punk band, and we've just done a record. So it's quite weird because I don't sing in this band. I just play lead guitar. So it's the first time I've done that in a band.
Yeah, but you see, but there is a potential opportunity here because I'm going to retire next year, and I still play the guitar occasionally, and I think now's a great opportunity for Mark and I to reform the Pink Peg Slax.
Yes,
and get the band going again.
Get the band back together.
Yeah. It's got to be done. It's like one of those moments. I think people would just love to. I mean, you probably keep seeing all these bands who've reformed and doing shows and doing little bits and pieces. So yes, it's got to be done, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Did you say what is the punk band, Mark? By the way,
called Variants, Variants.
Right. There you go. I'll check them out. It will be good. Anyway, look, this has been fantastic. Thank you. And if you want, I can always send you the link, and you can always put it on your social media platform sites.
Mm-hmm.
But and on your Instagram, what do you go? Is it the band's name, by the way?
Yeah, if you just search for Pink Peg Slax, I think it might be at Pink Peg Slax is the actual account.
It will come up anyway.
Yeah,
I'll find it.
There's also a Flickr account which I set up, which has got. I'm quite a keen photographer, and I've got a huge archive of Pink Peg Slax and pre-Pink Peg Slax memorabilia on my Flickr. Well, it's called the Pink Peg Slax Flickr account.
Right.
So we've got the Pink Peg Slax Flickr and the Pink Peg Slax Instagram, and the Instagram's more of a sort of digest or a summary of what's on the Flickr.
Yes.
Flickr account's really good. Some great pictures on there.
So
David David, is this going to be? When's it going to be broadcast? This?
Yeah, so I'll put it out next week because otherwise it gets kind of lost in the archives. Yeah, and then I can so it goes up on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, and any other ones as well. And then people go, bloody hell, you've just managed to get that band. I'd forgot about them for the last 40 years. That's normally the way it goes.
Yeah.
Or people go, God, I used to know that person. I shared a house.
Week.
Yeah, so hopefully next week that will be there. So I can always send you a link. And
yeah, please do.
I think I'm following it on the Audible app as well. Actually,
might be. God,
so I'll keep an eye out.
Keep an eye. And yes, I've just found your. It's funny you mentioned Flickr because I was obsessed with Flickr when it first started, and I've managed to not remember, but it's remembered my login. So. There you go. It's all there.
Yeah.
Quiff-tastic.
Yeah.
My God, when we were young. Jesus, great. So that's good. I'll be able to follow you all. So you've got sort of over 71 pictures up there, haven't you?
On the Instagram, the Pink Peg Slax got 317. I'm just looking at the Flickr account. 307. They're not all of the band. There are people our coterie of friends, I suppose, in Leeds at the time. But the Instagram is probably kept slightly more up to date. Yes,
it seems to be the easy way through, actually. So, okay, this is great. Okay, well, look, thank you for that top tip. I will now go and indulge in more sort of nostalgia from 41 years ago, or 43. Yeah. Anyway, look, thank you, guys. This has been amazing.
Yeah.
And I'll keep in touch.
David.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Mark. Take care.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Bye.
I'll give you a ring tomorrow, Pete.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. And that, dear listener, is pure rock and roll or rockabilly from Leeds. That is Pink Peg Slax, two of the members, Mark Wilson and Pete Barker. Like I said, if you go to their various social media platform sites, you will be able to find out more information. And track them down, be friends on Facebook, all that malarkey. It's good stuff. This is the C86 Show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just do C86 Show. All these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.